I think I'm recording. I hope I'm recording. Guys, my name is Jay Wilson. I'm a freelance consultant at my company, Onyx Reporting, and I do Domo. That's what I eat, sleep, and breathe. I was hanging out in the Domo dojo, and a user asked if it was possible to create an email data set in Domo. And they clarified not the email connector. The email connector allows you to send attachments like files into Domo, and then those files become the data set. But this user wanted to analyze individual emails. And I said, well, if you're using Exchange on premise and you have access to the server, you could probably parse the server logs and send them into Domo as a data set some way, somehow. And then I forget who said it, but some other brilliant person was like, no, just use a webhook. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the heck is a webhook? So today, we're all going to learn together how to use webhooks to bring emails into Domo. And by learn together, I mean I'm just going to show you. So Zapier has been around since possibly before Domo. It's been around for a while. But what it is a tool that allows you to create actions that allow you to communicate between different systems. So for example, I was using HubSpot for my CRM system. And when I would create a new record in CRM, I wanted to also kick off this MailChimp campaign that this new prospect would be a part of. Oh, joy. Or back when LinkedIn was a little bit more open, if I create a connection with someone on LinkedIn, I wanted to also create a document in OneNote where I could have all of the information about that contact. And that's what Zapier originally was for, is to allow automation and communication between different products. And Domo, more and more, is trying to become that tool, especially with their write back connector. They're trying to be in this place where they kind of orchestrate all of the things that Zapier does. Cool. Connector. So when you go into Zapier, you'll create a new Zap, and you'll start with the trigger. What makes something happen? In my case, my trigger is going to be that I have received a new email in my inbox. But you can actually have a ton of different triggers. You can have calendar events, calendar event getting updated, a new contact. Every app that you use will obviously have different triggers. All right, and this is just a sample email that was pulled from Outlook. Looks like I got a parcel from eBay. Okay, and this ultimately is the data set that I want to have in Domo, but this is interesting. I want to get the body content, right? But look how nasty that is. How far do we have to read until we actually get to the true body of the email? I'm still scrolling. The point is there's a lot of trash. So that'll be part of the challenge that we're going to address in this her webinar. Okay, so the trigger. The trigger says what makes the action happen. The action is, all right, now that you have an email, what do you want to do? In my case, I wanted to send data to a webhook. Now, I could have sent an action to Salesforce, or I could have created a new task in Google Tasks, right? But in this case, what we're interested in. You'll probably want to do a post. If you think you want to get or a put, check the internet, right? Figure it out. But post will work for this use case. That for now. Okay, cool. And now I get to customize the request. The first thing is I need my webhook URL. Zapier is asking me, hey Jay, I've got this email body. Where do you want me to send it to? When you go to configure a new connector, it's going to ask you what the webhook URL is. So you'll copy that link and paste it here. And that's how the data gets to the right data. Cool. Your payload type is JSON because we are building a JSON webhook connection in Domo. But different systems like Salesforce might use XML. Cool. Here under data, we're going to define the columns and rows that I want in Domo and where that data comes from my Outlook email body. So maybe I want to have a column called CC recipients. Maybe I want to know who my CC recipients are. For this email, there was no data, but you can imagine some of these email chains get pretty gnarly with thousands of email recipients. That might be interesting. Who knows? Cool. The rest of these settings very much are going to be a little bit of guess and play and hope that you get it right. But because I'm creating one record per email, I'm not going to wrap my request in an array. I'm not attaching a file, so that part's not interesting. With regards to flatten and unflatten, I'm going to set it to no because I want Domo to handle restructuring the data if it receives an array. And actually, I'm kind of intrigued to know how it's going to handle the CC recipients list because that's a list of recipients. In some cases, it might make sense where you want one column for each unique value. Like, let's say you have a survey and it's multiple choice. You can choose multiple answers. Checkbox, that's it. It's a checkbox. I want to have one column for each question. Using flattening would be a great way of handling the question array. But if I don't want it like a really long 500 column long data set, I should not enable flattening. So at this point, that question is one of how do you structure the data as it gets pulled into Domo? Because as we know, all of the data that goes into Domo must reside in rows and columns. Cool. We'll set the update method to append. And it seems like an obvious assumption that you're appending data, but this is actually one of the huge strengths of Domo. Domo creates what some people might call a data mart or a data lake, where I can accumulate data. And I can just accumulate data that won't persist in the real world. After this second in time, I can no longer ask Zapier to recreate, hey, I want a list of every email that I've ever received. Zapier and Webhook technology can't do that. It can only say, hey, I'm monitoring the ether. You got an email. Here's this record that I'm going to create in Domo as an append. I'm just going to slap it onto the bottom. And every time a new email comes in, that webhook technology is going to just say, hey, here's this new record. But because Domo's using an append, it's saying slap it onto the bottom of the data set. If I did replace, this data set that I accumulated over the years would go away, right? Because that's how replace works. And then I'd be really sad. But fortunately, Domo can restore data sets using the history tab, right? So you're not screwed. It's one of those small things people just kind of take for granted that Domo just magically makes work. Okay, one of the things that I didn't like about this experience of setting up a webhook is it wasn't clear to me how to secure my data. I'm sending emails via webhook to Domo. It would be nice if I could secure it with a secret and a signature header. I have an open support ticket because theoretically they support some sort of a not encryption, but some sort of an authorization scheme, but I couldn't figure out how to use it. It was really frustrating. But right now, my webhooks are not secure. Okay, let's test this out. We're going to test our action here. Okay, it should turn green. If it turns green, you're in a great place. And let's test it out. I'm going to go into my email and I'm going to find commute. and I'm going to forward an email to myself. Off it goes. Now in Zapier, hopefully, let me update my. Now Zapier's listening to my inbox, and if I click run, any new emails that came in since the last time I ran this Zap should hopefully be pushed into Domo. So it says, hey, I found a new email, post is successful. Huzzah. Great. Now I can come over here and I can click run dataset. Oh, hey, it updated a couple times. What time is it now? 6:56. It updated one row, so that should be done. Let's take a look at my data. What came in? Looking for an email from Kamut. There it is. There's my email from Kamut. All right. Now this is good, right? I have this data set and now I can analyze it, right? I can do stuff with that. Absolutely not, right? That's not useful information. Yes, congratulations, you've captured your email, but it's not useful information. Okay, so how do I remove all of these HTML tags? Because functionally, that's what they've sent me. They've sent me an HTML. Now, if you are a Python or R script programmer, you might be thinking, yeah, I can take that data set, pull it into Python, and I can use scikit-learn or some other tool to remove the HTML tags. And actually, if you own the Jupyter Notebook integration, if your company has that in Domo, this would be a great thing to do. You could open it up, process the data, spit out a data set, and move on with your life. Or if you have the Magic ETL scripting tiles, I'm pretty sure NLTK from R is there, and I'm pretty sure scikit-learn is as well available, so you can process your data in Magic ETL pipeline. Or, since I'm lazy and I'm using Zapier, I discovered that there is a really cool thing that we can do. Instead of just having one trigger and one action, I can actually have an extra action in between. I can create a formatter action. And in my formatter action, I guess Zapier have had this request a lot. I can work with my text to remove HTML tags. And now I can define from the data that was extracted from Outlook, what column do I want to apply that to? I'm going to apply it to my body content column. Cool. So now this Zapier thing will take the text and remove the ugly tags. Cool. So now in my post, when I customize what I'm sending to Domo, right, I'm going to say, hey, just kidding, I have a new column called from body contact, which I'll call body. All right, let's see if that worked, and let's see what that looks like. Let me send myself another email. this time from the Data Science Festival. No, not a reply. I need to. I'm going to refresh my email real quick like. Maybe a little quick. Send it to the right email? I did. Okay. And now I'll go back to Zapier. And I'm going to run it. Oh, you weren't watching. Darn it, it wasn't awake when I sent the email. Let me send it again. Sorry, guys. Okay. So just to be aware, like, Zapier is a platform like any product. It has a cost associated with it. So, there's a certain amount of things that you can automate, right? They have to make their money somehow, but the free version will work. And there's obviously competitors like Microsoft have their version of it. I think they call it Flow, maybe. And GitHub have a version of theirs for GitHub type things. There it is. Okay, so I got one new email, right? That email I just sent, the post is successful. So again, this, as long as this Zap is on, every time I send myself an email, it will accumulate. And then when I run my connector here, it will get whatever it has accumulated. Expecting a row. There it is. All right. Domo must love it. Why is this thing getting triggered over and over again? All right, so here's my row, right? The body was really dirty, had a lot of tags. And I said, we want to remove those HTML tags. And here's my clean body. And we did that all in Zapier using kind of a multi-step flow. Again, if you've got the chops, you can do this in R, you can do this in Python and have way more control over the thing, but this is just a quick way to get started with Zapier. Cool, we're really excited. I've got this clean body. Now it's information rich, right? I can just toss it in a visualization. Absolutely not. Nothing useful in here, right? So what if the question was, I want to know the topics people are talking about. That's what I want to know. How can I get that information? Well, what I'll do is I'm going to break each body into individual words. Then I'm going to toss out the words that are not important and only keep the important. That's the plan. How do we do it? We're going to do this all in Magic ETL 2.0. Now, a while ago, I posted a video about doing JSON and text parsing using MySQL. And recently on my YouTube channel, somebody mentioned that you can do it in Redshift. These are all true statements. But I'm going to show you guys how to do it in Magic 2.0. One, because Magic 2.0 is a beta feature, it's super cool, and this exercise will show off some of those new features. And two, unless you're talking stupid large data sets, it's very possible that Magic 2.0 will outperform MySQL and Redshift. I'm willing to bet money. So you guys come at me with how fast you got the data done, upload your data set. We'll see who does it faster. Which data flows run faster. That's your challenge. Right. Leave some comments. All right, let's get to work. Transforming this data into something we can analyze. Okay. So just a quick, to get us started, I'm only going to keep the columns of interest. Now, I'm going to keep the body and subject, and I'm going to toss out everything else because everything else is not necessarily populated. Run a quick preview here. While that's running, so body clean is only sometimes populated because that intermediate step that stripped out the HTML tags was not available in all of my pushes. I've run this a couple different times. So what I want to do is, if body clean is populated, I want to use body clean. But if it's not, let's just analyze the subject. Okay? So I need to do what's called a coalesce. And historically, Magic 2.0 made it really difficult to do a coalesce. It was this huge multi-step process, or an IFNULL. It was this huge multi-step process, and it just made me crazy, which was one of the reasons, like so many others, why we hated Magic 2.0. But now I can use a formula to do an IFNULL. So I want you to use body clean, but if body clean isn't populated, I want you to use the subject. How easy was that? If you know your basic beast modes, most of the transformations from your beast modes are available in Magic. So you're kind of recycling the knowledge that you already have. If you're a more advanced SQL developer, a lot of the stuff you use in SQL is already there. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm also excited about the fact that I can choose to create a new column. So I could call this body clean 2, or I can do an in-place transformation that will overwrite the existing column. Now, on most days of the week, I would not, absolutely not, overwrite an existing column. But since we're just doing a quick demo, I wanted to show that off. I'm also going to remove duplicates, because I know I sometimes send my email to myself multiple times. So I'm going to remove duplicates and only have unique body. All right. Take a look. So body clean is the column that we're going to operate on. And we're off to a great start. Got unique values. Now, one of the things I want to do right away is I want to just get rid of the ugly stuff. Let me get rid of any what's the phrase I'm looking for? I want to remove any sorry, why is my email going off at me? I'm going to remove some non-alphanumeric characters. So I'm going to add a formula. That says remove non-alphanumeric. So if I want to do some text processing, Usually I will use what's called a regex expression. If you know them, great. If you're like me and you don't know them, we just Google it. So I'm going to do a regex replace, and I'm going to search for keep alphanumeric regex. Obviously use this link a bunch. So how do I remove all non-alphanumeric characters except the dash? Hopefully this works. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Before I remove the non-alphanumeric, I'm going to split my words into, I'm going to split my sentences into individual words and then remove the alphanumeric. And I'm choosing to do that because I'm reliant on the space to identify each individual word. That's going to be my separator. If you were parsing JSON, you might use a comma or a combination of commas and double quotes as your separator, but I don't want to mess with text parsing just yet until I've split them into individual words. So I'm going to put this on ice for a second. What am I talking about? This column this row right here. In order to get it into useful data, I want to duplicate this row 3 times, and then I want to keep the first, second, and third word, the first, second, and third row. Does that make sense? So I would end up with read, jet, and report on separate rows. That's my goal. So how do I figure out how to split this? Well, what I want to do is I want to figure out how many words there are in each subject, in the body. So what I'll do is I will connect these. And so I'm looking for the number of words. We're going to work on the assumption that the space is the delimiter, the separator between words. And I will ultimately use a split part to separate them. But to get the number of words, I need to know how many spaces there were. And to get the number of spaces, I'm going to take the length of the original word, and I'm going to subtract the length of. What happens when you replace all of the spaces in body clean with an empty string? So jet reports, that's 15 letters. If I remove the spaces, I will have 13 letters. 13, sorry, 12. 15 minus 12 is 3. I have 3 spaces. Go with me on it. Go with me on it. Let's run a preview and we'll see it. Okay. Rejet reports. I have 15 letters. I remove the spaces. I have 15 letters. I remove the spaces. I have 2 left. I have 9 words here, 136 words there, 11 words there, and so on. Okay. Really? 635 words. All right. Now I want to generate 1 row per word. So this has 3 words. I want to duplicate the row n plus 1 times. Now to do that, I'm going to do a join. Now I've created a data set that I call one to many. And what it does is in my join column, it has a number. So let's look at the number 2. It's got a number 2. And then it counts backwards 2, 0, 1. Or for 3, I have 3, 2, 1, 0. And for 4, I have 4, 2, 1, 0, and so on. So if I take this column and join it to the number of words, then I will duplicate that row n number of times. Don't feel like I'm doing the best job describing this, but we're going to see it in just a second. It's almost as good as describing. So join the number of words on the join column. Now Domo throws an error because it says the data types don't match. Get ready for yet another cool feature of Magic 2.0. In Magic 1.0, we know that we would have to set the column type, and we would say, hey, set the column type as integer, right? And this works, it's okay. It gets the job done. But the cooler feature in Magic 2.0, if you go to the configuration tab, you can explicitly set the data type to what you want it to be. So that eliminates the need for this tile. What's even better about this, you know how sometimes you have that, like, I don't know, Excel document that for some reason you're still using, and sorry about the shade. Sorry, guys. You know, you have this like Excel document that you're using, and sometimes people fat finger like an extra space or a semicolon, and it breaks the web form or it breaks the data flow because it can no longer parse the value as an integer. Well, what's super cool about Magic 2.0 is it already has clever parsing. So it says, do your best to convert it to an integer. But if it can't convert the value to an integer, what do you want to do? By default, Domo will error the data flow, stop it, everything breaks. Which is, yeah, that's how a IT developer would want things. But a business user might say, you know what? I want the data flow to run. I need my data. So maybe I will replace the values that couldn't parse as integer with a null. Because I know there should never be a null, which means I can filter on, oh, I hate creating filters in old school Domo, new school Domo, add a formula rule. So if, so my filter rule is going to be the number is null. So those, sorry, only I could type. That's going to be my filter rule. And then I could output a data set that says these are the invalid rows. And now I can create an alert that says, hey, Jay, you need to take a look at these rows because somebody fat fingered the thing. I can fix it, but my data flow keeps running. Pretty cool. All of that stems from this ability to explicitly set your data type when you ingest and then define the behavior if a value does not conform to the data type you're expecting. Cool. Now that I set it to integer, I can do the join as expected, and the coolness continues. Now, right now, I'm joining my text data with my list of numbers. And I know these two columns will contain the same value. I can just drop the join column. Just drop it. If I wanted to, I could rename it, but I'm going to drop it because I don't need it. And what's cool about that is now I don't have to write that extra select that we had to create in Magic 1.0. All right. Cool. Let's see that in action. And thinking ahead, we're going to go about so now, going back to my preview, for jet reports, I have 3 rows because I joined on my one-to-many column. And so I have my rows repeated. What is the value of this? Now I can say, hey, I want you to split this string on the spaces. And then I want you to return the n plus 1, so the third word, so keep reports. And here n plus 1 is 1, so keep re. And 1 plus 1 is 2, so keep jet. So again, this is going to be my word column. And I'm going to use an expression that comes, sorry, I'm going to use a function that I think comes from Redshift and Postgres. called split part. And I will split the body. On the separator is a space. And the nth, I want to keep the nth, so num plus 1. You will hear like Magic ETL pundits and fanboys be like, the cool thing about Magic 2.0 is it can do distributed processing. That is true. You can. But what that means is so one of the challenges with the database is like with the database, if for whatever reason, like the power fails or a task gets interrupted, the database has to be able to restore back to the previous state, right? We can't have corrupted databases. And part of that requirement is defined in this standard called ACID, ACID, so Google Database ACID. More, but the idea is like I have to have safeguards in place that can allow me to restore to a previous version of the data of the database. And while that's very powerful and very important for big, like SAP and these like big enterprise systems, when I'm processing data in Magic, I don't have a requirement that says, hey, I need to roll back to the previous version of the thing. What I want to do is I want to push the data through the pipe and get it split as quickly as possible. And so Domo allows you to do what's called parallel processing. There's some different versions of parallel processing, but the one that's interesting in this context here is, let's say my database was, for this table was, 5 million rows, right? And if I need to be able to go back to a point in time and do this ACID thing, I have limitations on how much I can distribute the data because I have to keep track of who did I send the data to, who did the work, who completed, who didn't. With Magic and distributed processing, because I don't have that ACID requirement, I could literally chop up my table into, like, let's say 50 sets, hand 50 sets to like an intern and say, intern, do the work as quickly as you can, just get it done accurately. And as soon as the intern's done, I can just collate the results and move on with my life because I don't care about interruptions. I don't care about keeping logs. And that's one of the things that allows Magic to outperform Redshift and MySQL, is that it doesn't have to worry about like creating a log. Now that said, at some point, Redshift, because it's a database, will be faster at some activities like joins. On really, really large data sets, we remember Magic 1.0 was terrible at joins. And so we'd say, hey, if it's more than 5 million rows, use MySQL. If it's more than 10 million rows or 100 million rows, use Redshift. That was kind of rule of thumb guidance. Magic 2.0, the join engine or algorithm got better. So I'm comfortable doing a join like this in this data set, even though it can't take advantage of some of the features of databases that allow databases to be better at joining. Little nerd tip for you, let's move on. Okay, all right. So word split, did it work? Select here, so it gives me something to look at. All right, so jet reports, keep the nth word. Reports jet read. Case, keep the nth word, and it goes in and it goes on. So this was super cool. Keep the nth word. Again, databases are not designed, well, MySQL in particular is not super strong at like parse one row at a time and find the nth word and then extract the thing and then do the next row, find the nth word and do the thing. So MySQL, while yes, you can do this transform in MySQL, it is hard for it to be as fast as Redshift. And then so that's why people were like, yeah, we'll just process it in Redshift. But that's like overkill. That's throwing, using a hand grenade to kill an ant, right? It's just 5 million rows. We shouldn't be using Redshift for 5 million rows. But that's why we're doing this in Magic. Not because I'm a fanboy, but because it's the right tool for the job. Okay, cool. So we've gotten to this point, and now we're going to implement our regex. So we're going to do our little text cleansing operation that says just keep letters and strings. What was the regex expression? Regex replace square bracket and the string goes first. So the word, I want to process the word column. I want to apply this regex pattern and then replace with a blank. So I will call this word clean. Now, I'm also going to wrap all of this in a lower to make it all lowercase. Because if I have the word jet, full caps, and I have jet lowercase or capital J lowercase t, I want to treat those all as the same word. Now you might say, Jay, nope, don't want that. And that's fine. Maybe have it all in lowercase and then another column that retains the casing. You have choices. Like Power BI, right? Power BI is a proper noun, whereas Power and BI are separate things. So that just speaks to like having a more sophisticated data processing pipeline. For right now, we're just using unigrams or 1 grams, but you can also create what are called bigrams and trigrams that allow you to see collections of words, like Power BI, which is usually separated by space. Okay, what does this look like? So word clean is now all in lowercase, and notice the special characters have been removed. What's interesting here is now I've got some empty strings because this word was just square brackets. So maybe I'll add a filter that says remove the nulls. Great. Actually, I'm going to implement that right now. Add a rule that says word clean is not null. Cool. Now, before we finish off, I was talking earlier about boring words, words that don't add a lot of value to my analysis, like the word your. How many times is a word like you, the, a, and, not? How many times are words like those going to appear in your emails that you really don't want to visualize? The words we're interested in are error, alert, Domo, Power BI. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to flag a way to eliminate what are called stop words. What is a stop word? A stop word are words that don't add a lot of value to my analysis. And if you Google stop word list, NLTK is natural language text, I assume. I don't know what the K stands for. NLTK is an R package that is for processing natural language tasks. And so there is a list of stop words that you can add to your data set and say, these words, I want to eliminate those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join on my list of stop words. Now, guys, let's think carefully, right? In my list of stop words, they are already all in lowercase, so I is in lowercase. But what kind of join do I want to do? Do I want to do an inner or a left join? Choose carefully. If I do an inner join, I will only keep the words that are not interesting, right? I'll only keep stop words, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I will join word clean on column, which I guess is the name of my stop words column. But I'm going to do a right outer join. I want to keep all of the rows from my data set and include matches if there's a match. Now, to identify my stop words, I'm going to use my last formula, and I'm going to build, are you guys ready for it? I'm going to build a case statement, and I'm super excited despite the fact that you can't hear it in my voice. I'm super excited because Magic 1.0 was terrible at case statements. You couldn't do it. To do a case statement in Magic 1.0, you would have to do a filter. Then you would do whatever your logic was, and then you would append all of your different case statements together. But the worst part about the case statement wasn't the filter part. The hardest part was that else clause, because the else clause had to be the perfect negation of all of the other filters. Oh, it was terrible. Here we can just do a case. I'm so excited. So case when column. We're creating a is stop word. So when the column is not null, then it's populated, so we know that it's a stop word. Else. That's right. So here's my clean words. Clean words, these are all zeros, except for this one, your. Your is a stop word. It's an uninteresting word. It should be dropped. On, not an interesting word. It is a stop word. So I want to have that flag so in my cards I can remove it from my data set. Why isn't my filter working? I want to keep the rows where word clean is not null. Oh, is it blank? Oh, it's an empty string. I'm sorry, guys. Null and empty string are not the same. Does not equal. This, let me do one last select so it's nice, clean, and concise. So we're going to drop the column. Remember, this is my list of stop words. Stop words will be the same as the word column, so I don't need it twice. Subject and body clean will be like that's the base. So I'll call this sentence. I'll call this body. Number of words. Words in total word count. Then I have this is the nth word. If that means anything to you guys. The word, original, word clean, and then stop word. Okay. Just want to remove this stuff that I didn't care about. So I probably reorganize the columns just for presentation. All right. So here's the original body. Here's the word in its original format. Notice pre-regex, post-regex, right? Nicely cleaned. And then I have a way of identifying and eliminating the stop words. This is the final data set. This is something I can actually analyze because I might say, hey, how many different emails had the word Domo in it? How many different emails were talking about an alert? If there's a certain beta feature that I'm interested in, oh, that's interesting. What if my users were maintaining a list of words of interest, right? So I've got a spreadsheet that a web form that has all of the different product categories or certain things that I'm interested in tracking. And now I can say, oh, how many times did somebody mention Zap? Because Zap is a thing that I'm interested in. Or how many times people mention Domo or badge, whatever. So that's something I could join into my data set. Actually, I would probably fusion it in instead of joining it so that that list updates. Guys, we've come a long way. You've stuck around this far. Kudos to you for making it, because this was a long tutorial. We covered a lot of, I think, really good stuff. We started by building a webhook connector. which if you don't know what it is, just sounds intimidating. Hell, I was intimidated this morning when I was like, Jay, it's time to learn what a webhook connector is. But what we saw, and we're back in Zapier, what we saw is that a webhook connector basically is a way of two different systems to communicate with each other. And webhooks start with a trigger. So what makes the action happen? In my case, the trigger is Zapier is watching my email for a new email in my inbox. When it sees that new email, it's going to take a set of actions. So originally we just said, hey, post to this webhook that we're going to define in Domo land. But as kind of an intermediate step, remember we did that data processing task that would remove the HTML tags to give me a cleaner body. And that was super cool because I can leverage some pre-existing code in Zapier to make my analysis in Domo a little bit easier. We saw that as we were defining the post, we picked the columns, we picked the stuff of interest and structured our payload. Payload is like what you're delivering to the webhook. We structured the payload in the way that we wanted it to. So we cherry picked the columns and of interest. Kind of where I was getting stuck was with how do we handle authentication? What headers do I need? Right now there is none. So I don't think this is super secure, despite the fact that obviously I'm logging into my email using valid credentials, blah, blah, blah. But we send the data to the webhook. Let's take a look. I just deleted the transfer. Well, I have it saved. Okay, let's take a look at the connection settings. So this is a JSON webhook connector. Here under settings, right, we said, okay, this is the unique URL that Zapier has to post to get the right information to here. Now, what's kind of cool, if I had 5 or 6 different emails that I wanted to monitor, in Zapier, I would create 5 or 6 different tasks, but I would send all of the data to the same webhook. So all of the data is being accumulated in this one place. And because I'm using the append method, every time there's a new task, it just gets stuck onto the bottom. The one kind of downside to using this Zapier approach is, as we saw here, I didn't implement body clean until a couple passes into my work. So maybe if I had been collecting my webhook data for like a month, I could have had hundreds or thousands of rows, and only the last couple hundred might have this body clean. And that's one of the risks that you have when you're dealing with like third-party systems that don't persist a history. And that's not a flaw on Zapier's part. Like webhooks are not designed to persist history. That's Domo's job. That's what we're doing. Cool. We then went into our Magic 2.0, and we got really excited about the fact that, for example, we can, with Magic 2.0, we have new features like being able to define the data type. We looked at the new formula tile, and that was kind of the big hits. Those were the big hits of the pipeline. But what did we do? We configured our data to only have distinct subjects. And then we said, first step, figure out how many words there are in my body. And so I said, what is the length of the subject minus the length of the subject after you replace all of the spaces with a blank. So remember that Jet Reports example. Jet Reports has new Jet Reports or whatever it was has 15 words. After I remove the space, it has 13 words. 15 minus 13 is 2. There are 2 plus 1 words in this string. Cool. From there, we wanted to have 1 row for every word in the body. And so I used a join on a date dimension that I've created. Again, that has here, for example, is the number 3. That's how many words are in the sentence. And then I have a countdown from 3 back to 0 to to duplicate that row n times. From there, we used split part. And remember, split part is a Postgres or Redshift function that says split this string using this space as the delimiter and keep the n plus 1, so 1, 2, 3, or whatever countdown position we're on, keep the n plus 1 part. And this is the thing that you can do in Redshift. This is the thing you cannot do in MySQL. This is the thing that will be faster in Magic 2.0. I'm betting money. If you don't agree, post your execution times. Give me a sample data set. All right. From here, we implemented a regex expression to remove special characters. Again, I didn't write the regex expression. I literally Googled it in front of you, and then we wrapped it in a to lower. We wrapped it in a to lower so that when I attach it to my stop words, when I attach it to my list of stop words, it's a clean join. Remember, stop words are words that have low value in a text analysis context. So like I, me, my, myself, not interesting words. Those are stop words we want to eliminate. By the way, our, ours, ourselves, we might say, you know what, Jay, those are all relatively the same word. And that act of saying that words are similar by reducing them to their base word, the base word of our, that's called lemmatization. Or stemming. And there's different, like R and Python will have more robust methods for handling stemming and lemmatization. If that's something you're interested in, definitely Google it. It's a fun, bottle of Chardonnay and research. Cool. The last thing we wanted to do is we said, okay, now that I know which of my rows are stop words, I'm going to add an is stop word flag using a case statement in our formula tile so I can. All right, now we're actually done. My name is Jay Wilson. This has been super cool. Thank you for sticking around. If you found this useful, leave a comment. If you didn't find it useful, leave a comment. Catch you later.